Shalom, I'm Rabbi Jonathan, and today I'm reading from Leviticus chapters 14 and 15. I'm reading in the TLV, the Tree of Life Bible. Then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "This is the Torah of the one with Sa'arat, in the day of his cleansing. He should be brought to the Cohen, and the Cohen is to go to the outside of the camp. The Cohen is to examine him, and behold, if the mark of Sa'arat is healed in one with Sa'arat, then the Cohen is to command that 2 clean living birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop, be brought for the one being cleansed. The Cohen should command them to kill one of the birds in a clay pot over living water. As for the living bird, he is to take it, the cedar wood, the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them with the living bird into the blood of the bird that was killed over the living water. He is to sprinkle on the one being cleansed from the Sa'arat 7 times and pronounce him clean. Then release the living bird over the open field. The one to be cleansed must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe himself in water. Then he should be clean. After that, he may come into the camp, but is to dwell outside his tent for 7 days. Then on the 7th day, he is to shave all his hair from his head, his beard, and his eyebrows. He must shave off all his hair. He is to wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. Then he will be clean. On the 8th day, he is to take 2 male lambs without blemish, a 1-year-old ewe lamb without blemish, 3/10 of a pint of fine flour as a grain offering, mingled with oil, and a pint of oil. The Cohen who cleanses him is to set the man who is to be cleansed along with those items before Adonai at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The Cohen should then take one of the male lambs and offer it for a trespass offering with a pint of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Adonai. Then he is to slaughter the male lamb in the place where they slaughter the sin offering and the burnt offering in the sanctuary area. For the sin offering, like the trespass offering, belongs to the Cohen. It is most holy. Then the Cohen is to take some of the blood of the trespass offering and dab it on the tip of the right ear of the one being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The Cohen should then take some of the pint of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. He is to dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Adonai. Then the Cohen should dab some of the rest of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of the one being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the trespass offering. From what remains of the oil that is in his hand, the Cohen is to dab on the head of the one being cleansed. In this way, the Cohen will make atonement for him before Adonai. The Cohen should offer the sin offering and make atonement for the one being cleansed because of his uncleanness. Afterward, he is to slaughter the burnt offering. Then the Cohen is to present the burnt offering along with the grain offering on the altar. So the Cohen should make atonement for him, and he will be clean. If he is poor and cannot afford so much, then he should take 1 male lamb for a trespass offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, plus 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mingled with oil for a grain offering, a pint of oil, 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. The one should be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. On the 8th day he is to bring them to the Cohen for his cleansing, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, before Adonai. The Cohen is to take the lamb of the trespass offering and the pint of oil, and wave them for a wave offering before Adonai. He is to slaughter the lamb of the trespass offering. The Cohen is to take some of the blood of the trespass offering and dab it on the tip of the right ear of the one being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The Cohen should then pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. He is to sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Adonai. Then the Cohen is to dab some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of the one being cleansed, also on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the place of the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in his hand the Cohen is to dab on the head of the one being cleansed. To make atonement for him before Adonai, he is to offer one of the turtle doves or the young pigeons from what his hand can afford, the one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering, with the grain offering. The Cohen should make atonement for him, being cleansed before Adonai. This is the Torah for one on who is the mark of Tza'arat, who is not able to afford the sacrifice for his cleansing. Adonai spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Suppose you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for possession, and I put a mark of Tza'arat in a house in the land you possess. Then the one who owns the house should come and tell the Cohen, saying, Something like a mark has appeared in my house. The Cohen is to order the house emptied before he goes in to examine the mark, so that nothing in the house might be made unclean. Then afterward the Cohen is to enter to inspect the house. He is to examine the mark, and behold, if the mark is in the walls of the house with hollow streaks, greenish or reddish, and appears deeper than the wall, then the Cohen is to go out of the house to the door and close up the house for 7 days. Then the Cohen is to come again on the 7th day, and behold, if the mark has spread in the walls of the house, then the Cohen is to command that they take out the stones which are marked and throw them into an unclean place outside of the city. He should also have the inside of the house scraped all throughout, and they are to dump the mortar that they scraped off outside of the city into an unclean place. They may then take other stones and put them in the place of those stones. Likewise, he can take other mortar and plaster the house. But suppose the contamination returns, breaking out in the house after he has pulled out the stones and after he has scraped the house, and it has been replastered. Then the Cohen is to go examine, and behold, if the plague has spread within the house, it is a destructive mildew inside. It is unclean. He is to break down the house, its stones, its timber, along with all the house's mortar, and carry them out of the city into an unclean place. Moreover, whoever goes into the house while it is shut up will be unclean until the evening. The one who lies down in the house must wash his clothes, and he who eats in the house must wash his clothes too. But if the Cohen comes in, inspects it, and behold, the plague has not spread within the house after it was replastered, then he should pronounce the house clean, because the contamination is healed. In order to cleanse the house, he is to take 2 birds, cedarwood, scarlet, and hyssop. He is to kill one of the birds in a clay pot over living water. Then he is to take the cedarwood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them into the blood of the slain bird, as well as the living water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He should cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, with the living water, with the living bird, the cedarwood, the hyssop, and the scarlet. But he is to let the living bird go out of the city into the open field. So he is to make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. This is the Torah for any mark of Tza'arat, even for a scab, or the Tza'arat in a garment, or for a house, or for a swelling, a scab or a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the Torah of Tza'arat. Adonai spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak to Bnei Israel and tell them, when any man has a fluid discharge from his body because of his discharge, he is unclean. This is to be his uncleanness in his discharge. Whether his body flows with his discharge, or his body obstructs his discharge, it is his uncleanness. Every bed on which he who has the discharge lies will become unclean, and everything he sits on will be unclean. Whoever touches his bed is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whoever sits on anything on which the man who has the discharge sat is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches the body of the one who has the discharge is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Or if the one who has the discharge spits on someone who is clean, then he also is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Any saddle the one who has the discharge rides on will be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him will be unclean until the evening. Whoever carries them is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Also, anyone the person with the discharge touches, without rinsing his hands in water, should wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. A clay pot that one with the discharge touches should be broken, and every wooden vessel should be rinsed in water. When the one who has a fluid discharge is cleansed of his issue, then he is to count for himself 7 days for his purification, and wash his clothes. Then he is to bathe his body in running water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day he is to take 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and come before Adonai at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and give them to the Cohen. The Cohen is to offer them, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. So the Cohen should make atonement for him before Adonai for his fluid discharge. If any man has an emission of semen, then he is to bathe his whole body in water, and be unclean until the evening. Every garment and all leather with semen on it are to be washed with water, and will be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman, and there is an emission of semen, they should both bathe themselves in water, and be unclean until the evening. If a woman has a discharge, and her discharge from her body is blood, she should be in her nidah 7 days, and whoever touches her will be unclean until the evening. Everything that she lies on in her nidah will become unclean. Also everything that she sits on will become unclean. Whoever touches her bed is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches anything that she sits on is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. If it is on the bed or on anything where she sits, when he touches it, he will be unclean until the evening. If any man lies with her, so that her nidah gets on him, he will be unclean for 7 days, and every bed where he lies will be unclean. Now if a woman has a discharge of her blood for many days, not during her nidah, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her nidah, all the days of the discharge of her uncleanness should be as in the days of her nidah. She is unclean. Every bed where she lies, all the days of her discharge, will be like her bed during her nidah, and everything she sits on will become unclean, like the uncleanness of her nidah. Whoever touches these things will become unclean, and is to wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she is to count off 7 days for herself, and after that she will be clean. On the 8th day she is to take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the Cohen at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The Cohen is to offer the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. So the Cohen will make atonement for her before Adonai for the uncleanness of her discharge. So you are to keep Bnei Israel separate from their uncleanness, so they will not die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. This is the Torah for one who has a discharge, or for one who has an emission of semen, which causes him to become unclean, as well as for her who has her period of nidah, and for the man or woman who has a discharge, or the one who lies with her, who is unclean.